Black women, let's talk. We have some things that we can celebrate. It's well known in the news today that Black women are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs out there. And Forbes magazine recently confirmed this in one of their latest articles. Also, you can look at study after study after study that Black women are the most educated out of every race of woman in America. That is a great accomplishment considering all of the things that Black women have been through with our history here. And I think that's something to be celebrated and highly esteemed. However, the Black woman, for whatever reason, whether it be jealousy, whether it be of some other motive, is often vilified for her pursuit of education from the Black community, especially from Black men. And I wanted to get a little bit into that and explain to you why that education is often vilified in many communities. It's not just within the scope of the Black community. And when I say community, you know I say that very loosely. And you don't know what I'm talking about, you can check out one of my previous videos entitled "The Black Community is Done. Rome is Burning." I believe that. Okay? So if you need proof of all of these stats where Black women came out on top every time when they were pitted against every other race of woman, you can take a look at the study recently put out by the U.S. Department of Education, their National Center for Education Statistics. They did a study in 2012, and they looked at the period of 2009 to 2010 of Black women who accounted for 68% of all associate degrees. Out of all Black people, Black women accounted for 68% of those associate degrees. So if you break down that statistic, that means that 68% of Black women are getting degrees, while the rest of the percentage are Black men. 70% of Black women out of Black people have all the bachelor's degrees, obtained all the bachelor's degrees in 2009 to 2010, as compared to 30% of Black men during that time. 71% of all the master's degrees out of Black people, and 65% of all the doctorate degrees between the years 2009 and 2010 were obtained by Black women. That is a very interesting subject there. It puts Black women in a very tough position because when you talk about relationships and when you talk about dealing with the opposite sex, if you just look at the numbers here, you see that there are obviously more women with degrees in our community versus men. And you can draw that conclusion by looking at these statistics. You can draw that conclusion by the sheer fact that even if Black women are catching up from previous years of not being able to obtain education or simply not being interested in it, to now being more interested than ever at obtaining these degrees, then so be it. The fact is that we do have more across the board.
Okay, my IBMOR brothers, how you guys doing? This is the second part of the HYPERGAMY series that I've done. I may do another one, I don't know. But this one is the first video that I'm going to do on Simone56. As you just heard in the opening clip, there's a big reason why I need to go in on this particular female. But since this is a semi-response video, we have to do this fairly, and we have to attack not her opinion, but the statistics. And you know what they say about statistics. Mark Twain said it 150 years ago about statistics. There's lies, there's damn lies, and then there's statistics. How you draw them and how you read them determines the results that you're going to get out of the other end. And if you put in garbage in one end, you're going to get garbage out in the other. Now, the statistics that she reads off are real, and they are true. But like anything else, the devil is always in the details. And normally, if the study is well crafted, the details are hidden in small print, where they're very difficult to find. But in this case, the details aren't in small print and they aren't difficult to find because they're in the very same studies and stories that she draws from. Let's start with the first one. The Forbes magazine article about the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in America. And there's always a key word about anything else in statistics. When you hear the key fastest growing, you have to take fastest growing with a grain of salt. Just like in the software business, Linux used to be the fastest growing operating system in the world. And that sounded great until you compared them against the biggest operating system in the world. And at the time, Linux had about, I would say, 5% of the market, even though it was growing fast. And but Microsoft had 87% of the market. So it's not only how you grow, but where you start. So when they say that African American women are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in the United States, from 1997 to 2015, about 18 years, where the group were, as far as entrepreneurs and entrepreneur startups by Black women, grew by 322%. But the fact is that before that, as entrepreneurs, they were almost non-existent. And just like Linux versus Microsoft, even though they've grown very fast, they still only account for 8% of the total of entrepreneurs and businesses in the United States. And the second fact in that particular article is the reasons why that Black women grew as far as entrepreneurs in the United States. It's not because there was a great opportunity and they really wanted to go into business for themselves. The mere fact is that nobody was hiring them. With all that education that they have, nobody was hiring them. They couldn't get jobs, especially in the areas that she discusses. So what did they have to do? Like anybody else, if nobody's going to hire you, you got to make your own job. Now, the article doesn't give revenues of how much on average these entrepreneurs earn, or these companies earn, or what size they are, or how many employees that they have. All they have is how many people or how many Black women filed to start a business. That makes you an entrepreneur. That being said, now the story about Black women being the most educated group of people in the United States out of all of the races. And if you look at the study, that would be correct. Even if you look at the chart, that would be correct. Now, this is a chart from the study that she's drawn upon. And the study she mentions from 2009 to 2010, and the study came out in 2011, is accurate. This is exactly what it says. But if you read what it says and notice that the devil is in the details, but the details are right up front. They're not talking about how educated the Black women are. They're talking about college enrollment by race and gender. And it says Black women number 1. Now, I may be an old fool, but the last time I checked, just because you enrolled into a school and signed your name and registered does not mean that you are educated. And the fact that this is just a sample of 1 year and not over a 20-year period, say even like the last story. The last story actually has more legitimacy because it was over a longer period of time, over 18 years, and the story actually did go into detail about why you saw this particular phenomenon. This one does not, but it's a small sample from 1 year, and the gap between Black women and everybody else is not that great. Now, the second point, she's talking about Black women being the most educated. How many Black women have degrees, associates, bachelors, masters, and doctorates? And they do have more across the board. That's no doubt about that. There's also a story behind that, and the devil's always in the details. Even though they just published a story, it's an old story. And a lot of people have said that's an old story. And it has a lot more to do with males and females than it does with Black and white, even though, as with everything between Black men and women, it's more extreme. But even at that, we'll get into that a little deeper because that's going to take a little bit more explanation. What upsets me is the fact that you're beating your chest and stomping your feet like you've won a victory. Do you have something to be proud of? Sure. But is it a victory? I don't think so. But like anything else, the devil is in the details. And later on in this particular podcast, I'm going to get into that a little bit more. But we're going to go to the next cut.
This puts us in a very interesting situation when it comes to the dynamics between men and women in our community, because a lot of our men do not have degrees. A lot of them do not have the earnings potential as the women do that are in similar situations as them. Now, please do not get me wrong. You can not have a degree and still be able to have earnings potential. You can be an entrepreneur. You don't have to have a degree to be an entrepreneur, as black women are proving, because black women are becoming that fastest growing group of entrepreneurs in America. You don't have to have a degree to make money or to improve yourself. You could be working for the city and just meet the minimum requirements and just have a high school diploma and make a lot of money working for any city, municipality in this country if you meet the qualifications and you're picked for a test, but you're out there doing something. So I'm not devaluing those that do not have an education. What I am doing here is simply saying that in this world, we're not living in an industrial era anymore, where a man can simply go out, maybe work with his hands, work for somebody, and be able to support an entire family. Those days are gone. It's more about white collar, and it's more about having a degree. Right now, that bachelor's degree has become like the high school diploma of long ago. The bachelor's degree is the holding line. It's almost a requirement that you need to just even get through the door in some of these companies. You need one. When it comes to most things and most jobs that you want to pursue, at least in the white collar realm, or even in some, do I agree with all of that? With some of those things, not all. I don't think you need a bachelor's degree to become a janitor, for instance. I have seen postings like that, but the janitor is often paid really well, has great benefits, all that other stuff, but they want them to at least start from that door. And gone are the days where you can start at a company and be the secretary, and then maybe 3, 4, 5 years later be an assistant manager, a manager, and then 10, 20 years later be in the executive ranks of that company. It doesn't say it can't happen, but there are too many hard checks and balances now where that degree is needed to even get past that barrier to even have a shot. And black women have more of them. So black women are offered more positions, and black women are able to be more versatile in having options and getting into those positions. And ladies, I said all of that to say this. People hate that you're getting an education, and I say people because this is not just about black men. This is about society in general. Society in general hates that you're getting an education because it gives you money-making potential and options. It gives you power. It gives you a preference. It gives you the opportunity to exercise preference over your life. And this is why societies in general hate it when women get educations. They don't want women to be smart about options that they have. They don't want women to have too many options, because women with options may decide that those men are no longer an option and are going to choose better.
Now, let's all give a slow clap for Simone56 and that rousing speech. Mel, doesn't that just get you fired up with all of the emotion, all that chest thumping and brow beating and all that stuff? Oh, man, she just told us black men where to go and what black women are getting ready to do. Black women are out there getting ready to set the world on fire. That being said, now it's time to get back to reality. Here's an article that I found from AmericanPerspective.com. Why black women with higher education can't get ahead in the workforce. Black women in higher education outnumber every other group as divided by racial gender specifications. The number of black women with college degrees continue to rise. However, they are having trouble getting ahead. The promise of America and of most civilized first world countries is one of education, then advancement. Why is this uniquely not the case for black women in America? It takes a 2-income, college-educated household to make it in these days. and black men are not keeping up with black women. Just because black women are finding new and unprecedented success in the halls of higher education does not mean that they are finding suitable mates to help them carry the financial load of creating a real world advancement. Not that black women are incapable of shouldering the load on their own. No one can shoulder the load on their own, men or women, according to the best minds in statistics and economics. White women with college education are almost 3 times as likely to marry a man with a college education as black women are. Although no study connecting the rate of college-age marriages and household income between races has been conducted, many experts say that the correlation is far too high to ignore. Black women do not get as far because they are not able to marry husbands that are on their level. Where we heard that one before. Black women obtain degrees in areas that do not pay as much. Although the total number of black women in college is rising, the amount of women who are setting themselves up for high-paying, jet-setting jobs in the tech or investment industries is quite slim. Most of the programs that black women are in set them up for government jobs or low-paying health care positions. These positions place them firmly in the middle class. However, they never receive the extra money that it would take from an income in order to build wealth beyond a day-to-day subsistence living situation. The degrees that prepare people for high-paying jobs are still overwhelmingly taken by white males, at least in the United States. In order for black women to catch up to this standard, they would have to redirect their efforts into degrees that are pointed squarely at industries with a better pay scale. As this article points out, even though a lot of black women have numbers and they have degrees because of where their training is and the industries they decide to go into are still low paying or lower paying. So in spite of your degrees, you're still making the same money. Or in some cases, the field that they go into is already flooded, such as psychology or business. And they wind up having to take a retail job or a job in Starbucks or something like that with a degree. So even though they have advancement opportunities, the pay scale is too small. So when you look at individual black incomes, even though black women are more educated and have more degrees and they are better entrepreneurs and they're kick-ass people and they're beating men left and right, they still lag behind in pay when compared to the men that they're better than. So for all that chest bumping and chest thumping, when it comes down to the scoreboard where the rubber meets the road as far as earning an income, what she just said was a load of bullshit. At the end of the day, your degree in $1 will get you a cup of coffee. If you can't make it work for you, then what happens? Nothing. And if you look at this pay gap, it was even bigger before the recession in 2008 through 2015, when a lot of men had their incomes cut. So the gap was even bigger. Even though it's a new world and things are changing, and it's becoming a service economy, guess who still earns more money at the end of the day? So really, is it black women that need to choose better, or is it black men that need to choose better? All things being equal.
Many societies and cultures love putting women into a box so they do not have a decision to make. This is what many cultures are still doing to this day when they refuse to educate women or refuse to allow women to know how to drive, because having that kind of ability gives a woman great access to do other things other than think about a man. And in patriarchal society, and don't get it twisted, these men keep talking about the black community is matriarchal. No, it's not matriarchal. It is failed patriarchy. That's what you see in the refugee camps of black America. The failed patriarchy because of the failed efforts of men. So it has made women have to go out, seek education, so they can support the families, because these men have left these women to fend for themselves with children. So of course, what do you think women are going to do? If given the opportunity, they're going to go out here and do what they have to do, and they saw their ticket, an opportunity to do so through getting degrees for money making potential. And black women have capitalized on that, and I am so happy to see it, because it gives them options. And this is why a certain sect of black men tend to hate women with education. They prefer you to be dependent on them with no hope of leaving them. Even if you wake up every day to a fist to your dome, being abused, whatever, they don't want you to have the option to leave. Women of yesteryear, and they talk about the 1950s. They want us to go back to the times where we couldn't drink from the same water fountains and do all kinds of other stuff. Yeah, okay. But they always talk about this time supposedly before feminism was on the scene. But those women couldn't just walk away from their abusive marriages. They would be on the street, because women were not given the opportunities that they were given now to make money and to do things. Those women would be out on the street. So many of those women chose to stay and deal with that abusive behavior many of those men were putting forth, the cheating, the loveless marriages, because their survival depended on it. Those women made those decisions to stay in those marriages because of their survival. This is why certain men devalue your education, or dissuade women from getting education, or in some countries and in some cultures prohibit women from getting education. They have to, in order to convince you that they are all you need.
Here's something I love about black woman logic. They always manage to contradict themselves and tell the truth at the same time. Now, she rants about how black patriarchy prohibited women from going to school and seeking an education, and that black men have held them back, forcing black women to stay with them, and how black men prevented black women from getting an education. These are the black women that we did not raise, apparently. These are the black women that we abandoned, apparently. These are the black women that the black patriarchy, quote unquote, held back for hundreds of years. And even now we're holding them back because we hate them getting an education. But we are the same men that left them and our kids to fend for themselves, while at the same time holding them back so they couldn't leave us. Does that make sense to you? And as far as a black patriarchy, everybody knows that there is no black patriarchy, never has been, failed or otherwise. They've been talking about a black matriarchy in the black community for about 150 years, since we got out of slavery. Black men can never and have never been able to make black women do anything with themselves or their children, which is something that Daniel Patrick Moynihan said 50 years ago in his now famous Moynihan report. But hell, this chick with no credentials knows better than the foremost scholars that have been around for 150 years, that have written several books going all the way back to W.E. Du Bois, that talks about the black matriarchy, which is something they're ashamed of, because that would make them responsible for what's going on in the black community. Even while they said they're the backbone of the community, the backbone that doesn't take responsibility for their act. But that being said, let's talk about this education that black men have held black women back from. This is an excerpt from an article that I have. Black women are the most educated group in the United States, from good.com. And they're talking to a black gender studies professor, Nell Irvin Painter, and about black women being more educated than black men. And I quote, "In some sense, this is more about women than it is about black women. In fact, the fact that women are going to college more than men is old news. The part of a larger phenomenon, but as with many things in black community, more extreme in the black community. The fact that black women are going to college more than black men is even older news. Whatever's happening in our society that makes women going to college more than men, that's the best explanation. Further, for generations, black Americans have seen education as an important way of mitigating discrimination. It's a particular truism in our community that you need an education to succeed. It's one area where we're able to say, you can't take that away from me. How does this contrast with the status quo a generation or two ago? Not so long ago, jobs for black women were highly circumscribed. Our choices were not wide. We couldn't do on-the-job training to become a plumber or a longshoreman, for instance. Just going to college to become a teacher was a significant step for black women and for all women. It was seen as a lifesaver or an escape hatch. I was looking for my historical graph. Man, I wanted to put it in there because it goes back to 1900 and it shows that black women have always had more education than black men, as the lady spoke about. It's not a conspiracy. It's the fact that black men have always been more valued for their strength in their labor. So black girls always graduated high school at a greater rate and graduate college at a greater rate because they couldn't do what black men did. They couldn't be a plumber or a longshoreman or a farmer or a laborer in an auto factory. They couldn't do it because it required muscle and strength. So the only avenues that were left to them were education, teachers, nurses, secretaries, and the like. They had to get an education for that. So it's absolutely bullshit that black men and black families held black women back, especially since the 1960s when the out of wedlock rate just exploded and the marriage rate went down. There weren't black men in the homes to prevent black women from doing anything. And like she was saying, she said that they stayed with black men because they would starve. They would be on the street without them. So they suffered through whatever they suffered through, not because they loved black men or they were so faithful to black men. It was out of necessity, which is something that MGTOWs and IBMORs have said forever. Your education doesn't do anybody any good, not for men, because guess what? You're not protecting and providing for us. We're expected to do the opposite. So your education means nothing to black men. So now that you can work and you can earn your own money and take care of your family, you're still complaining. You've made a disaster of the black community and you're still complaining. So what are you going to do? Go to the white side and complain even more?
This is why certain men devalue your education or dissuade women from getting education, or in some countries and in some cultures prohibit women from getting education. They have to in order to convince you that they are all you need. On to another kind of subject in hand that has something to do with this. Women today are initiating divorces so much more than men are today. Back to what I was talking about, those women that had to stay in those marriages. Now women are initiating divorces. And then men try to use that against you and say, oh, look at you wanting to divorce it. But never consider what the marriage might have been like, what the woman might have had to put up with. Women now have an out when a male is treacherous and is not treating her and her children well. And they hate society. This is what all these MGTOWs and all this other stuff, they're upset because women have an out. That they can no longer just treat women like crap and hey, now have an out. While I do not agree with abortion at all, women have an out now when they are pregnant by a no good male. They can go have an abortion. Nah, I don't agree with that. I agree that you just don't need to mess with a no good male. But there are women that are out there that are saying, look, I have an out now. I don't need to deal with this. I don't need to tie myself to this man for the next how many years so he can leverage this child against me. I am going to have an abortion. And it is a sad commentary when women would rather go and slaughter and kill their babies than have to deal with the likes of some of you men. Men are upset about this. They're upset that a woman can go make a life for herself, can go make a life for her children with her education without them. They want to feel needed, and they know right now they are not needed in that regard, and it burns the male ego to no end. Now, if a woman can take care of herself, she can even marry. What? She can even marry now? And have a man of means accept her and her children? This is why a certain sect of males have this code that men who do this are simps, and they try to shame men who do this and call them simps. And the women who have children out of wedlock, they try to say that they're used goods, because if this behavior was accepted as the norm, women wouldn't go running back to them out of desperation or survival. You know, you hear all of these scenarios that these sick, twisted males come up with. And they all depend on women being defenseless and utterly dependent on men for their support. I have seen men on social media actually wish that there be economic collapse and women have no choice but to grovel at their feet. I have heard men say that they wish that there comes a time where women are going to have to depend on men. This is all they can really put their money on because they have nothing else. Nothing else. So glad and I thank God that society has built-in safety nets for women to protect them from males who don't care about them and their children. And ladies, don't let these bitter Bobby males on social media or elsewhere make you feel ashamed about taking help. When the men in your life want you to accept a life of struggle, abuse, and pain, they want you to suffer because you dealt with them and left them. And they no longer want you. They want to just discard you. They want to see you and their seed suffer. It's absolutely sickening. This has led me to a conclusion when it comes to black women and their options concerning dating and mating, because like I said before in the video, having these degrees puts you in a difficult situation where you as a black woman, as far as educational status, is going to have to marry down if you are just going to choose a black man. If you're fine with that, fine. But I find nothing wrong with a woman wanting a man who has similar academic qualifications, similar earnings potential, or potential to even earn more money than she does. Nothing wrong with that. And this is why I tell black women that they need to practice hypergamy. You need to start practicing it a whole lot more. What is hypergamy, you ask? It is the term used for the act or practice of a woman marrying a man of a higher social status than herself. And in our culture, that usually transmits to economic status, but it's not necessarily that. Dealing with men that usually have more earnings potential, more education. Women all over the world practice hypergamy. And black women are the only group of women who are constantly encouraged to marry down, when in society it is usually the case that men are the ones marrying down, because men do not value the same things that women do when it comes to mating and dating. As men are supposed to be the providers and the protectors, it is only natural for a woman to want a man that is of higher economic status than her, because she wants to be protected, she wants to be loved, she wants to make sure that her children have a legacy from a good man, having a good relationship, and she also wants to be protected as a woman. Nothing wrong with it. Black women, I encourage hypergamy amongst us. I encourage us to stop marrying down, and that is regardless of race. But I encourage us to start looking for men that are of higher social status and class. And in order to survive in patriarchy, and in order for women to survive in patriarchal societies, you better follow this pattern, because this is one of those ancient paths that has served women very well. Now, I can't tell you who to marry and who to be with, but that's just my recommendation. You don't have to settle for somebody broke because of love. Love is one of those things that folks lie about in relationships, as if love is the only thing you need for a marriage to work. A marriage is a partnership. You need a whole lot of things working on in tandem with one another in order for a marriage to work. And love, this romanticized, this Roman view of love that men who cannot support families try to put forth to you so they can have access to you, is not going to cut it in these societies where things have turned. And now you, as black women, now hold the keys.
Ding, 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 ding. Winner, winner, winner. Miss Simone, I couldn't have said it better myself. Out of the mouths of a black woman. She just hit all the bells and checked all the boxes. Every argument that the MGTOWs have had about women, and black MGTOWs had about black women and marriage and children, she just hit. She just talked about black women having the option and filing for a divorce more than men, which is the black divorce rate is about 80%, and 80% of women file for divorce, which is something MGTOW says, and she just agreed with us. She just agreed with us about abortion and how abortion is an option because black women don't want to be tied to a no good man. But the part she leaves out is that if they use birth control, the 31 forms of birth control in the first place, they wouldn't have to take that escape hatch of having an abortion. That abortion is if that trap does not work. Black women can pay $600-700 for an abortion, but they can't pay $200 or $300 for a pack of birth control pills, or even less. Pay $100 for a year's supply of condoms. That shows you the backward thinking of black women. She brags about the option of having the option of divorce and filing for it more than men. And then she claims that MGTOWs or black men use that against them for not marrying them. Can I get a duh? Sometimes I swear to God, I don't know if this woman is educated or she just pretends to be one on YouTube. My goodness. She claims that she's a math major. She's supposed to be logical. That's just math. If 80% of marriages end in divorce and 80% of women file for that bad boy, why on earth would any black man want to marry a black woman under these circumstances? If she's going to walk out on you with your kids and file for child support as like 80% of black women do, why would you want to even have children by her? Hell, half the black men encourage the black women to have freaking abortions. In fact, I would dare to say there's a whole lot of black men paying for abortions. It's not something that I'm proud of because it should never get to that. But black men also invest in condoms. They're the biggest condom wearing population in the United States by about 10%. And for somebody that's supposed to be Christian, you're legitimizing out of wedlock births, which is what is destroying your community. And this is something that black women legitimize. It's unbelievable. You legitimize it. You co-sign it. You co-sign black women leaving the man because she can't get her way. And then you blame it on black men. Now she gets into the meat of the argument that because they have a higher educational situation, they have more degrees, that's going to allow them to practice hypergamy. Even though it's on record that 25% of women with a bachelor's degree or higher never marry and never have children. Almost 75% of black women don't get married at all or are single. So what does that mean? Black men aren't marrying you anyway. So why should we give a shit who the fuck you marry? So you're talking about jumping the fence and marrying somebody else. So what? That's the problem. So what? If we wanted you to stay and we wanted to marry you, we would have done it. Evidently, we don't want to. So hypergamy doesn't bother black men. Please practice it. Now, Miss Simone keeps forgetting. Now, she's supposed to be a math major. She keeps forgetting. There's one fly in her ointment. There's one little stickler in her plan. It's called supply and demand. If we're only black women that had degrees and had higher degrees and had more potential, as she claims, which is untrue as we've proven, then she would be right. They could jump the fence, go to other races, get men that were of higher status and had more earnings potential than them, and then black men. It'd be okay. There's just one problem. All the women are doing the same thing at the same time. If you look at black, you look at Hispanic, you look at white, you look at Asian, 70% of people going to college are women. That means what? There's only about 30% of men going to college. And that means men as a group. So that is a factor of 2 to 1. So why should a man of means, a man of high education, pick you when he could pick a multitude from his own group? In fact, like you said, men don't care about education or care about the same things that women do. So men marry down. So since there's only 25% of the people that actually have high education, guess what? Those men and men of means have 75% of the population of women to choose from. What makes you think that they're going to choose you? White women marry high educational men at 3 times the rate that black women do. I think it might be 4. In other words, most of those guys are already taken by white women or Asian women or Hispanic women. So what's left over is slim pickings. In fact, it's even slimmer than what you would get on the black side. In fact, the Hispanic women, the Asian women who have a higher status than you are coming over and picking off those guys, those men of means. In fact, they're picking off the guys that are blue collar right under your very noses. And they marry at a higher rate than you do. So it sounds like a great plan, except for one thing. When you have to get out there and compete on the field of battle, and the record shows over the last 50 years, you aren't doing very well. So black women are not marrying down because they want to. Black women are marrying down because guess what? They have to if they want to get married. And if they don't want to get married, guess who doesn't care? Black men. Black men have the highest never marry rate of any race in the United States. And guess what? Black men are doing that voluntarily. Why buy the cow or encase the heifer when you can get the milk for free? And as long as they wear a condom, they can get it scot-free. That's why half of the bastard baby makers are sleeping with 10% of the men, the only men that will actually get them pregnant. That's why they turn to the biggest alpha male on the block, which is Uncle Sam, which is why the black community is in the state that it's in. And as far as MGTOWs don't want to marry you. MGTOWs don't want to have children by you. So saying that MGTOWs are angry because you won't deal with them, that is the farthest thing from the truth that you have said yet. So I'm going to close with a quote from Dr. Phil, a phrase from Dr. Phil about black women practicing hypergamy in this highly competitive atmosphere for men, especially men of means. How's that working out for you?